What's good, everyone? It's your boy Natsu with another video for the channel. Welcome back to DMB Sports Zone. And today I got a really special guest. It's Rick, and he is one of the best Washington football team columnists, YouTubers, podcasters, anything you want to even think about on all platforms. And I'm glad, Rick Snider, that you're here to really join the stream and give us your impressive insight on the Washington football team and really all things DMB sports. And I usually like to start off the interviews with the guest introducing himself. And I was wondering if you could give, a couple things, couple pointers to the DMB Sports Zone community right now that is watching this in terms of your career and how it's led you to the point that you're at right now.
I'm a rare person that grew up doing what he wanted to do. I was 12 years old. I saw a school paper and I thought that would be cool. And by 18, my first semester, I lucked out and got a stringing job at the paper while I was going to college. The next year, they fired that editor and I gave him my job. I got it. So I became an editor at 19, made a million mistakes, but, you learn from them. And was very lucky. By 25, I'm on dailies. I've worked for the Washington Times, where I was a beat writer covering this team, and also columnist for the Washington Examiner and the Washington Post Express. And hard times always keep knocking on the door. I have a whole collection of pink slips when you want to see them there. It's been, last year I was with SI, stuff like that. But I'm at 106.7 The Fan. I write columns for them and Warpath Magazine, which comes out once a month now. It used to be a weekly a long time ago. And I've covered the team. My first day was 83. So that's almost 40 years ago,
Yeah.
I don't know where that time went. I laughed. Doug Williams one time, I didn't see Doug for many years. When he came back, he says, I just don't recognize you. I said, Doug, I was 27 when you won the Super Bowl. I looked a little different back then. He looks about the same, but I don't. And I've covered everything you can imagine, been everywhere you can imagine. It's been a great life as I kind of near retirement. Not sure when that'll be, but being in the news world, you get to see everything up close. You get to meet people. I grew up watching the Redskins in the 70s. And, my heroes, it's different when you cover a team. You have to be more detached. But, guys like Sonny Jurgensen, Billy Kilmer, and all that, Sam Huff were my heroes. I've gotten to know them all so well on the sidelines nowadays. It's a real great perk. They say not to meet your heroes because they're usually jerks, and I will say it's often true. But they aren't. And it's been a hell of a ride. I got to cover some Super Bowls, and Jack Kent Cooke used to yell at me all the time. That was always fun. I can tell you those stories. My God, we're an idiot. I mean, just all the time. He was really interesting. I've been very fortunate to be able to do what I do. And even though covering the Redskins, I often call them that still, or whatever we're going to call them next. It's a little tough. I spent a lot of sunsets out at Redskin Park. Had a heart attack there at 42. I was lucky that the team trainer, Bubba Tire, saved my life. That was in 2002. So we almost had the Rick Snider Memorial press box that day. But I've learned to appreciate what a great thing it was I got to do.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And yeah, it's okay to call them the Redskins. I mean, they still technically don't have a permanent name yet. So, but go ahead.
And I'm still struggling with that too, because if I talk about somebody in the past, they weren't a Washington football team player. They were a Redskin player.
Exactly.
And, I've got to figure out how we're going to do this, on the end, because you got to kind of pick a side. But now we're in a temporary zone. I saw where they're still trying to get names submitted. There are 15,000 names have been submitted. Well, they can't be individual, or we're talking Vulcan or something. Aren't 15,000 words that we could use unless Latin, but they came from 60 countries and 6 continents. So I guess the Penguins said screw off, but everybody else is in on this deal. So, Antarctica's the only one that hasn't weighed in on this yet. I have no idea. People ask, where are they going to name it? I have no idea, because I don't think they know either. I think they have a short list, and they got to do due diligence on trademarks and maybe work a deal or whatever. I don't know who it is yet. I don't really care. Pick a name. I liked Redskins. I didn't see it as this big problem. And if there hadn't been the cancel culture and everything that happened last summer, I don't think he would have changed it. But here we are in the new world. So football team, I don't particularly love it. If I could name the team, I think a cool thing would be to be called Washington FC, and the FC would stand for Federal City, which is what Washington was first called when it opened. It wasn't called Washington. They renamed it after George died. So we could be FC, football club, but also Federal City. But the problem is Washington may get to be a state next year. You got Democrats that want to do it. They lead the Senate now. They can push it through. And if it's ever going to happen, it's going to happen in the next year. And then where are we? I don't know. Then we're Washington Douglas Commonwealth would be the name for D.C. because you already have the Washington State. So I don't know. We'll be interested to see what the new name, hail to whatever. I mean, I like HTTR. So maybe it's Red Wolves and we still do that. I don't know.
Well, before asking you some following questions about the name, I do want to mention Pedro Smith. Make sure you guys subscribe to Rick's channel. I made sure to put the link to the channel in the description. So if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe. Again, posts amazing content on there and has been a great presence in the Washington football team community for so long. So make sure you go out and support Rick with the YouTube channel and all the things that he's doing right now. Also the Twitter page as well, which I'll make sure to link in the description if I haven't already. And with the name, though, do you think right now the leading contender is the Washington football team name, or do you believe Red Wolves or potentially Warriors might be their first name that they might go with permanently?
My guess is they're going to surprise us. I don't see Warriors sounds okay, but then there's other people that say that's racist. I don't know. I mean, and then you have the Red Wolves. I mean, I'll say this. I've covered games at NC State, and they're the Wolves. And, man, they get howling in that stadium and arenas. It's a show. When they get anything happens and you hear, I mean, it's a show. I really like that. And God knows they've made the people in FedEx howl just for the wrong reasons. But, I could see FedEx people really getting into howling. I think it'd be kind of cool. I mean, if they call them the Wolves or Red Wolf, whatever. So I think that's a possibility. The Red Tails had a short time that was in the public venue, but I don't think that's going to be it. And Washington football team could be, I mean, it's not people seem to have just lived with it. Are they living with it because it's temporary? As a writer, I hate it because there's no nickname. You can't do team kind of thing. I think they'll come up with something you'll go, what? And live with it then.
Yeah. All I hope is that they don't go with the Wizards route where they just take a bunch of fan suggestions and all the fan suggestions are poor and they ultimately just pick the best out of the bunch that is poor, right? Because Wizards, I mean, that has nothing to do with the area. So I hope they don't go that route, but should be interesting to see. I believe April 5th is the deadline for submissions for name suggestions.
I mean, you don't win anything if you get it right, I guess. But, the Wizards, Abe Poland I covered, was a nice man. He was in Israel. There was a lot of violence, and he just felt like that changing it from bullets would help decrease violence, which, of course, did not. But he ran a big poll. He said, we'll go with the fans pick. The fans picked Sea Dogs for some stupid reason. We're not anywhere near the sea, 3 hours away. And he said, screw that. We're calling it the Wizards. And I was just like, well, then what was the whole point of this other thing? Well, because people will pick a stupid name on spite just to do it. So you can't do it by ruling by the masses.
Yeah. But moving on from the name, there was some other news that broke, I believe, yesterday, if not today, actually. And that revolves the menace that never goes away, that always seems to have a dark cloud hovering over this franchise, and that is Dan Snyder. And Dan Snyder reportedly bought out all the minority shares of the Washington football team, so he has 100% ownership of the team. And I was wondering, what are your thoughts on this amidst all of this seeming behind-the-scenes ownership drama that has been happening in D.C. for several years, but especially over the last year with the name change and obviously with these allegations surrounding Dan Snyder and the front office at that time? What are your thoughts on all that going on?
I pity reporters that cover boring teams because, here, I remember one day Dan Steinberg of the Post one day said, gee, things are getting boring here. And you're like, oh no. And here we go. It was like a day later, I wrote back, shut up, because here we go. You can't go more than a few days without drama with this team. You just can't. I mean, look what happened last year. My God. And then the coach gets cancer. I mean, it just, holy God, what is going on with this team? So the three minority owners, claim, and you have to say alleged because I don't know the real truth, but they felt that Dan mistreated them, didn't pay them right. These kind of high profile guys usually end up eating each other in the end anyway, because they're all alpha males and they just can't coexist. So they wanted to basically, Dan Snyder had the right of first refusal to buy. He's holding them off for a while. They want to get to the open market because they know they'll get more money than they would otherwise. And it's true. And that did prove true. And they go into courtrooms finally. The NFL hates transparency more than anything. They never want to show cards. And it's a privately held team, so they don't have to show their cards. So they tried to make the minority owners agree to an arbitrator where they could hide everything. They said, no, we're going into New York City, and this is going to be a Broadway play. And sure enough, and the NFL is dying over this. I'm sure they finally got to Snyder and said, you've got to stop before the big stuff comes out. They don't ever want to show financials of a team because they don't want the average Joe to figure out you're paying $10, $15 for a beer to a billionaire. They don't want you to see these things because then you don't want to do it. Why should I? There has been a big revolt about not giving Dan Snyder money and buying merchandise and all that. So they finally, the NFL cut a break. You can only have so much debt because they don't ever want somebody to default and a bank suddenly own a team and they can't pick their partner. That's a big fear in the NFL. So the finance committee came out and said, yes, you can have $450 million in debt to help pay off these guys. But there's two things that will happen there. He'll get total control again, and he's going to buy them probably 10 to 20% under market value. I could see him flipping it to someone else and reselling the shares, making a nice profit. And with the TV rights suddenly going for $110 billion, team's probably worth $4 billion now. And he's going to pay market about, 2.8. So he's making money here. Dan Snyder wins in this whole thing in the end, and making a ton of money. And this will all probably happen next week. And then by the NFL doing this, it also tells us one other thing. That big report that's supposed to be coming out, and there was leaks about maybe he was going to get forced out or whatever. They're not doing all this if they plan on knocking him out soon. So I expect that big report, which took 8 months to do. I don't know about you, man. I could have done that in a month, max. but you let lawyers get billable hours, they're going to kill you on this stuff. So they took 8 months. And I bet it comes out on a Friday at 4 o'clock this week, next week. We're going to find Dan $100,000, that kind of thing. And to be fair, Dan Snyder has made the changes, whether he wanted to or not. He's hired a lot of different people for his front office. They've done some really good things. He fired some of the people involved. No one accused Dan directly. So he still has some lawsuits out there with these women, and that's another civil court thing. But they'll figure it out in the end. But I think this clearly shows that Dan Snyder's going nowhere thanks to the NFL. That's the last thing. There is a mechanism that if 2/3 of the owners vote to expel you, then you can. But it's never happened. I mean, I don't know what you'd have to do. Jerry Richardson was forced out, but Jerry was 82. And he was basically a man of a different era, and you said things to women back in that era that you can't say now, but he never touched anybody. This wasn't a sex scandal. He's just merely improper language. Most places they made you go down to HR and watch videos for a while or something, but I think he wanted to go. Dan Snyder doesn't want to go. So not that Dan's beloved by the other owners. Jerry Richardson was. They really didn't want to say goodbye to him. He'd been played in the league. He'd been around forever. But Dan Snyder now, I think he escapes this whole thing.
He escapes another one, right?
Well, there was just a gleam that people were thinking, hey, maybe Bezos will buy this team. Bezos has got a house. He bought a museum in Washington. They spent 2 years renovating it. There's no street parking. They put up a big sign so the tour buses can't go through there anymore. But they thought maybe he'd do it. He could certainly write a check for $4 billion, but Dan doesn't want to sell. So I wish you would take the money, go sit on your yacht in Europe and buy a football team over there. But I don't think so. I don't think he's good. He's making a lot of money. He's having fun.
Yeah. And moving off from the ownership, I do want to talk about Washington's free agency moves, and I was wondering what your thoughts on the moves as a whole. Right, we have the signing of Curtis Samuel, signing of William Jackson, a third, Ryan Fitzpatrick, obviously at the quarterback position. What are your thoughts on all those moves, and do you think this has pretty much allowed Washington to be in the driver's seat when it comes to the division in 2021?
I gave him an A. I thought they were, weren't a lot of moves, but they were good moves. Everything comes down to your quarterback, always. I've said before, I think this team, if they get the quarterback right, can be in the Super Bowl in 2-3 years. They've got the defense, and you've got to do it then, because then your defense is going to start picking apart. That line, somebody's a free agent, somebody gets hurt. Things, you only have a narrow window. I think if they get the quarterback right, and I don't know what they're going to do in the draft. I think it's more of a second round than the first. It just didn't lie in the right spots for them. So you get Fitzpatrick to come in. He's a stopgap for a year or two. I looked at his whole career. His win-loss record's horrible. His touchdowns, interceptions are not great. He likes to say, last year I played great. Well, he was 4-3, and I think it was 13 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. He's okay. He's okay for the short term. I think Kyle Allen could still maybe be it because he's Rivera's favorite. And Taylor Heineke, I don't know. I'd like to see another game out of that one after, he almost beat Brady in the playoffs. I mean, I'd at least look at him. But I think Fitzpatrick will be the starter. So he's an upgrade off of Alex Smith, I think. He's a little cheaper too. So I like that one. Okay, I'm not thrilled, but I can live with that one. Jackson is a better corner than Darby. So, that's an upgrade. Samuel, they needed a second receiver badly. You also getting Kelvin Harmon coming back from an injury on there. So, the receiver core, finally, it's not just going to be Terry. It's going to be several guys that are versatile, that can also run. Like the weird part of Samuel, most rushing yards by a receiver last 2 years in the NFL. Weird. So everybody can do either, running and passing. I think Scott Turner's done a nice job. He showed me a lot in the last 2 months of the season. They were scoring, with duct tape and doing stuff. And so I give him some real weapons. It might be interesting, but it all comes down to the quarterback. It always does.
Yeah. I mean, you gave everyone your thoughts about Fitzpatrick being the week 1 starter for Washington, but do you believe that the quarterbacks as is going to be the case come week 1, or do you believe Washington's going to add a quarterback in the draft, potentially even, and the later stages of free agency? Do you think they'll add to the position?
Well, I doubt there's a quarterback they'll add in free agency. I mean, there's been talk that Darnold comes loose, that they may make a move for him. That could happen all the way up to the draft. It's a possibility. But could they draft one? I'd say it's 50-50. Just depends on what's on the board, on there. The kid Trask, it could be something. I'm not sure everybody likes the Alabama quarterback for there. I think it's 50-50. Maybe you take a linebacker or receiver instead. So I think that's up in the air. And Rivera promised he'd have an open competition. He said, I regret last season giving Haskins the ball, but he had no preseason games or anything to work with to see anything, so you had to go with the owner's guy on there. And now supposedly the schedule comes out. It's going to be a 17-game regular season, 3-game preseason. It doesn't look like there's going to be any off-season camps live because the union doesn't want them, because you're going to have to bring in players for 14 days to quarantine for a 3-day mini camp. That they don't really want to do it. They're probably going to do Zoom again. So Rivera's got to be a little blind going into training camp to see what can these people do. Is Fitzpatrick learning the playbook? Well, he's been on 8 teams. He probably can. But is Allen really healthy with that leg? Is Heineke sell his soul to the devil for one game and not really it? That's what you got to figure out, and you got to figure it out in just a few weeks.
Yeah. And before diving into the next couple of questions, I do want to shout out once again everybody in the chat. Brandon, speaking of Warpath, as you mentioned earlier, on the Warpath, wanted me to tell you the capital of Canada is Ottawa. I don't know if that's an inside joke, but
Because I told a story once. A hockey writer when I was at the paper, an old grizzly, mean old guy, asked me one day at the desk, "Hey, what's the capital of Canada?" I go, "Toronto." Oh man, I got stupid American. And so he must have heard that one somewhere that I told that story. I didn't know. Never did that. Cover hockey.
Yeah, that's fair. And everybody else, Brandon as well, He Got Sports will be on for the second half hour of the show. And moving on from the Washington football team specifically, again, with the NFC East, the Giants, Cowboys, the Eagles, do you believe Washington was a clear-cut free agency winner in the division this offseason? Or do you believe the Giants or potentially even the Cowboys beat them out in free agency? And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's funny when you look at what the Vegas odds are to win it. I said last week, not even having seen them yet, I said, Cowboys will be favored because there are so many Cowboys fans that want to bet. They always do this. It's like going to the ACC basketball media day. It's always the 4 Carolina teams first on top of the poll. And so that's always the way with Dallas. They always think they're going to win. And they kept Dak, which they really needed, but it cost them an arm and a leg. That restricts some things. I didn't see them making any big moves. The Giants have made some moves, but they stunk last year too. So in Philly, I'm not sure. I mean, I've seen some stuff there, but I think Washington should be the favorite to win the division. Is that 8-8? Maybe. The schedules, you got to play the first place schedule next year. So that's a little games. Yeah. So the schedule's coming out in mid-May because they're not going to do any international games this fall. And they were trying to see what's going on with the pandemic. And they just finished negotiating TVs. I mean, normally it's out by early April, but there's a lot of moving parts this year. So I hate the 17-game thing. It's stupid. You're never going to be 8-8. You're going to be 8-9, or or you have 9 home games one year and only 8 the next year. Stupid stuff. Just make it 18-2. That would have been. That's the next TV contract, I guess. On there, everything's now about Nickelodeon and exploding slime on people or something.
Yeah, Mitchell Trubisky with the Nickelodeon. What was it? The MVP, I believe, for the kids out there. But moving on from the Washington football team, actually, and really the NFC East and really the entire NFL, I was wondering. I see, on your Twitter page, you mentioned the Terps a lot, and I was wondering, what do you make of the 2021 men's NCAA basketball tournament thus far and the relative lack of success from the college basketball teams in the DMV area? What are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I think I saw there was 9 teams between DC to Richmond, and everybody's gone. I'm a Maryland grad. I watch Maryland a lot, and they didn't have an inside guy at all. They had, some decent players. They got as far as they could go. A second round. Alabama, I've never seen anybody shoot 3-pointers in my life like that. I mean, nobody's beating you that day. They gave it a shot. Georgetown, Georgetown and Georgia Tech both fooled me in my bracket. I looked at them as big momentums coming off of their conference championships. And sometimes the team does that, and then they're just flat afterwards. And that's what happened to both Georgetown and Georgia Tech on there. So, I mean, I got to like Alabama's chances. I haven't really watched Gonzaga much being out west, but this could be a year somebody weird wins because, just the whole year has been weird like that. So my Maryland women, they may win too. They just hung 100 points again. When do you see women's teams scoring 100 points? You don't see men's teams doing that much either. I mean, unless you're playing the Wizards, then you can score points. But wow, it's pretty impressive. So Maryland may end up winning the women's championship, but I think the men did the best they could. It's tough in the madness. The big schools traditionally have advantages. You may beat them short, but there's a couple teams. Loyola's in there now, and what's the other one? Oral Roberts. Where is that? I mean, I don't think God takes sides on games. So, you can pray all you want. It's not like you're playing the devils, from from hell. Yeah, it's kind of crazy, but it's always sports has been the great savior for us in the pandemic. I mean, I've been home just forever like everybody else, and finally sports. Give the NFL credit. No one thought they could get through a season, and the Washington only had 2 positives One was like coming into camp and one during a practice player during it. That was it, because they were afraid for Rivera. And, going through cancer treatments, you didn't want to be the man who killed the coach. And they really did good. And I thought whoever wins this is going to be the people who handled this well. Coming into this year, people are getting vaccinated. I got mine, luckily. When they get to training camp, they're going to test people for COVID, but not every day anymore, because they figure by July, everybody's got a shot that wants to get a shot. Yeah. And so it won't be as big a factor this year. But, in basketball and, look, there's teams trying to hold it together, and all of this has been tough, but it's been the great part on TV, because nothing else is on TV. There's hardly any shows, regular shows. So I love watching games. The NFL was great this season, and March Madness will be too.
Oh, agreed.
Great.
And everybody took COVID precautions with the team, with the Washington football team, except for Dwayne Haskins, right? A couple of times violating protocols there. But before getting into the last question, where I dive into, or I ask about the future of the Washington football team, I do want to ask you, with the NCAA tournament, who do you have winning it all by the time mid-April comes around?
I took Michigan. Big surprise, but I liked Michigan a lot. I had them over Georgia Tech, so screwed there. But the ones usually show up most years. And Baylor looked pretty good. Gonzaga looks good. So the Michigan Gonzaga game, I think they'll meet at one point. That'll be worth watching. I think it'll be exciting, just like always. They look at the NFL and said, "Oh, look at these off-season camps. You didn't get to have them. They're not going to be blah, 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 blah." Did you see any fall in the play level? Not really. Looked like regular old football to me. So, just like this year, it's just, if you let NFL coach have their way, they would practice every single day of the offseason. They'd make them be out there every day. Give them Sunday off. And they know that. They know that. That's why Joe Gibbs, worked forever. They're killing themselves doing this kind of stuff. So they have to have rules to stop them from doing it. But these guys know what they're doing. I didn't see any drop off in play. And even though practices are very light during the fall, they don't let them hit much anymore. It used to be 2 a day. I mean, Marty Schottenheimer about beat the hell out of his team. The Junction Boys kind of stuff. They started out 0-5. There's no one way to get to camp. I've seen Club Med with Jay, where they basically didn't do anything and would succeed. Marty made them work really hard, beat the hell, and they were 0-5. I mean, it just depends on if you have the players.
Okay. And last but not least, as I like to ask on every single Washington football weekly live stream, I want to ask you, what are your thoughts about the future of this Washington football team? Do you think, you sort of touched on it earlier with the Super Bowl prediction, right? If we were to get a quarterback, but do you think, potentially we're a year away from getting to that point, or what are your thoughts on the future, the general future of this franchise?
I think they're probably a couple years away. To be successful, I learned this from the very first coach I covered when I was 18. He said, you don't jump from the doghouse to the penthouse in one bite. And it takes a couple years to learn to win. And he was very right about that. And he couldn't win big games at all, but he was a good guy. But I think they're going to need to make another step. And I often ask coaches, what's the hardest thing to do? Go from bad to good or good to great? And it's always good to great is much harder to do. And I think that's where they stand. They're improving. The question is, can you improve in January? That's the whole point now. They know they can get there, but can they get better? I think they need a couple more years, and they got to have the right quarterback. And I think they're as good as anybody at that point, because this D-line is going to always give you a puncher's chance on that. And long term, I would say they're probably going to have to announce a stadium and within 3 years max. I think they stay near FedEx. There's room to be out there. They'll stay in Maryland, is my guess. I don't see RFK getting a return. People would love it. But they forget that RFK was just a hellhole of a place. It's just everybody was drunk and bouncing up and down the stands. They forget the true parts. But I think they stay in the area, probably in Maryland. And but we'll see. Sports betting is so big now, it could put money on the table somewhere else.
Yep. With that being said, thank you very much, Rick Snider, for joining the stream. Great interview. A lot of people in the chat, thank you for joining as well. And Rick, any last things you want to plug or tell the good people out there about before we wrap up?
Well, since we're on YouTube, just come over to my page when you're done, or just now. As soon as I get off, just come on now. Screw the last half of the show. But Rick Snider's Washington, you can see a lot of. I do 2 stories a day. One's a long one where I tell some old story about Sam Huff or somebody, and the other one's current about whatever's going on right now. I was yelling about cherry blossoms today, so it gets. And one's 2 minutes because that's all you can do on another platform. But the other ones are like 8 minutes. I know, and I've looked at my analytics. After about 3 minutes, everybody's like, so you guys just have no attention span anymore. I haven't even gotten to the point in these things, but love to have you come over and see what you think and subscribe. If nothing else, you don't even have to watch anymore. Just hit the subscribe button once. And I'll see you then.
Yeah, for sure. And again, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe. Put the link in the description, just to make it easier for you guys. But thank you again, Mr. Snyder, for joining. And yeah, I think we're gonna have Abdullah on for the second half hour. If you leave the StreamYard studio, I believe. But yeah, thank you again for joining.
All right, thanks everybody. Glad to come on. It was a great show.
Appreciate it. All right, Abdullah.
What's up, man?
How are you?
That was a fun interview.
Yeah. Got to have the great Rick Snider on, who has been covering the Washington football team since 1983, as he said in the interview. So a lot of years of heartache and pain with this team, but I think brighter days are ahead.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. If not with Ron Rivera,
I don't know who will be, man. If it's not Ron Rivera, I don't know who will be.
Oh my gosh, yeah. But first and foremost, as I do with every person who's on the show, can you introduce yourself to the channel? I know you've been on a couple of times on the DMV Sports Zone channel, but for all the new people out there who perhaps watching this video, could you introduce yourself and yeah, anything you got going on with your your YouTube page or your content?
Yeah, okay. Thanks, man. So my name's Abdullah. I go by my channel is HeGotSports, and I just make Washington football team and Washington Wizards content. Yeah, the Wizards, who are terrible. It's hard to make content about them when you just sound repetitive the whole time. But football team, future's looking bright, so it's fun talking about them, though.
Yeah, for sure. First question of the stream, as I asked Rick, actually, what are your thoughts about everything going on with Dan Snyder and the ownership, right? You reportedly bought out all the minority shares of the Washington football team. And what are your thoughts on that? Do you think a bit of the reason why he did that was because of the fact that he knows Washington is moving in the right direction for at least the first time in our lifetimes? Or do you think it was just a money play, right? Like, he had the power to do it, so might as well just do it. Do you think it was something like that? What were your thoughts on that?
I think it's both, honestly. And I think when Dan realized that Dwayne was a failed project, I think he knew that was the last straw. And I think when he brought in Ron told him that if I'm the head coach, your nose is not going to be near the football operations. And I'm pretty sure he looked himself in the mirror and said, my ego it's just I can't take this anymore as an owner. And hopefully, we won't have to criticize him anymore. And I really think him realizing that this team isn't going to the right path in the future, I feel like he's the type of person to just say, hey, I'm just going to sit down, relax, and just get more. Because I'm pretty sure if we win more games, he gets more money. So
yeah, that's how it works. Yeah. But I moving around a bit with the questions. I see Ali asked earlier about Fabian Moreau, or mentioned earlier about Fabian Moreau signing with Atlanta. So on that note, what are your thoughts on the DBs group and particularly the quarterbacks group? And do you think it's pretty top notch right now with Kendall Fuller and William Jackson, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think the signing of William Jackson was an upgrade over Ronald Darby. And we could have maybe draft one, but not maybe in the third or fourth. But I think with our elite defensive line, we don't need stud corners, honestly. And we saw that last year with Ronald. I guarantee you, in Denver, I don't think Ronald Darby is going to do that good, even though they have an aging Von Miller and Bradley Chubb. But I don't think he's going to do that good there.
Yeah. And then with the Washington football team's moves as a whole this free agency, What are your thoughts on all the moves that have been made? And
You,
do you wish that Washington, would have been a little bit more active over the last week, right, since the Curtis Samuel move? Or just what are your thoughts on Washington and free agency as a
it
whole?
would have been nice if they were active during the daytime. They were only
Yeah.
they were just signing people at night. But no, I mean, I love the free agency moves, man. You bring in a veteran quarterback who can be a mentor and potentially lead you to a playoff, lead you to a playoff caliber team. And Curtis Samuel, a great slot receiver. Him and Terry McLaurin, great buddies, and William Jackson, a great corner, underrated, honestly. And I didn't watch him a lot, but when you see that game last year against us, basically, he did a pretty good job against Terry McLaurin. Terry had to fight for those balls, but I got to give it an A. And I just can't wait to the draft. It's going to be really interesting to see what they do now that we have 2 third-round picks and a second.
It's gonna be fun. But even with Terry, do you think he's gonna have an absolutely monster year with Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback now because of the fact that he likes to pepper his wide receiver 1 targets with a bunch of targets and a bunch of catches?
Yeah, I think he's gonna have a great year. Probably better than last year, of course, because Ryan Fitzpatrick loves to throw the ball downfield, and I think there's not gonna be like a lot of double teaming because you got to put more attention on Curtis Samuel, or if we drafted a Rashad Bateman from Minnesota. It all depends on if Ryan Fitzpatrick, he can throw the ball downfield, but now that we have a Curtis Samuel, he's definitely gonna get more targets.
Yeah, agreed. And there was some with the Ryan Fitzpatrick move. Let's stick to that right now. Do you think Washington's quarterback room is settled for the 2021 season, or do you believe potentially they might pick up another guy in the draft? And what are your thoughts on that?
I think it'll be in the draft, and I really like Trey Lance. I really do. And I don't know if he's gonna be there or probably gonna have to trade up. But whoever, if Ron's guy's there, I believe in Ron, and you gotta go and trade up for that guy. Because I don't think Kyle Allen, I love the guy. I mean, coming off an injury, I don't think he's the future. Taylor Heineke, the sample size and durability was an issue. Ryan Fitzpatrick, he has a turnover problem, so I don't know. It's going to be really interesting, though. I just really hope we get a quarterback. I want to buy a quarterback jersey, man.
We need a quarterback really bad. It's crazy because like I say all the time, like I'm here in Chicago and like the Bears need a quarterback, but we need a quarterback too. It's like it's just inconsistency at the quarterback position, right? Like we have Alex
for so
Smith.
long.
Yeah. And even when we won Super Bowls, right? Before when the Redskins were still the Redskins, and like this was before we were even born, right? They were winning Super Bowls and they didn't even have like all-time great quarterback player, right? They had Joe Theismann, who was good. They had Doug Williams, who was also good. And then Mark Rippon, who, had a good couple of years, but then fell off. So hopefully we get that quarterback in no time. But do you think Fitzpatrick, like let alone Terry, do you think Fitzpatrick is going to have a good year here in DC?
I think like last year, looking back at it, I don't know why the Dolphins pulled him out and put Tua in. I thought that was a bad move, but he was playing pretty good. They were like 6-3, I'm pretty sure. But I'm pretty sure if Fitzpatrick is the starter with our great defense and an offensive line, which is probably going to, I think, top 10. They finished 6th or 7th last year. And the addition of Curtis Samuel and maybe some more weapons in the draft with Logan Thomas, I think he's going to have a good year, probably better than last year.
Okay. What about Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissick, the running back room? Do you think Gibson is also going to break out completely this year?
I love Antonio Gibson. I think he's going to have a great year. I don't know. I mean, a great rookie year, a breakout year. I mean, I feel like it's coming, but I totally forgot about Bryce Love. I think
the team wants you to forget about Bryce Love.
I don't know, man. I mean, I want to see what he can do, but it's just, is he going to make the team? I don't know.
Yeah. And you know what? While we're at it, let's just go through the position groups. What are your thoughts on the offensive line? Do you think we might add a left tackle potentially, or do you think Cornelius Lucas was pretty underrated last year? Do you think?
Yeah, I feel confident if we start in week 1. But the one thing I really want to do is just to give Brandon Sheriff a deal. I really want to give it. Even though like he may have an injury history, just took him 4th overall in 2015. And just got locked that up. He's I think it was an All-Pro, right? Yeah. He made the All-Pro team. And the the right. I love Morgan Moses. Did you see that deal he had with what was it, IHOP?
IHOP, yeah.
That was amazing. I'm confident in this offensive line. They can protect Fitzpatrick, and the run blocking is going to be there as well. So.
Yeah. I mean, Brandon Sheriff, first All-Pro player for Washington since 1996, right?
And our punter was man. Oh,
that's crazy. But hopefully, Brandon Sheriff stays here for the long term. But so with the offensive line, with the running backs, well, wide receivers, we touched on Terry, but what are your thoughts on the group as a whole? Do you think we would add a receiver in the draft, like Rashad Bateman or potentially someone later in the draft?
Yeah, I saw a report today that we were somehow interested in N'Keal Harry, the first rounder from New England. But the thing is, if Bill Belichick can't coach him into a elite receiver or just a decent receiver, one of the greatest coaches of all time, I don't expect us to develop him into that. But I don't know. I would give up a 6 or 7 for him. But in the draft,
but let me ask you this, Abdullah. What does N'Keal Harry? This is on Twitter too, and it's a really good comment. But what does N'Keal Harry bring to the table for the Washington football team that a guy like Kelvin Harmon or even a Cam Sims doesn't bring?
I think N'Keal Harry, I think it was his jump ball that brought him out. They made him a first rounder. He was really good at catching those 50-50 balls. I think a lot of people expected him to be that person. He was supposed to be our Josh Doxson, basically what we expected. But I don't know this wide receiver draft class coming up, really good prospects. But I don't know. Kelvin Harmon coming off an injury, I'm pretty sure they're going to cut Steven Sims. He was basically our Trey Quinn of last year. Yeah. And I don't know. But I do think Cam Sims I like him at our wide receiver 3, though.
But with Steven Sims, do you think what he showed at the tail end of the season when we actually had good quarterback play for the first time, throughout the season, right, in the playoffs and even, in the couple of reps that Taylor Heinicke had towards the end of the regular season, do you think he showed enough? Steven Sims showed enough?
I think he showed enough to be on the team, but not a wide receiver 2 or 3, because especially on special teams, the special teams alone, you just don't put him out there. And he did drop some balls that were crucial. I don't know. He just needs to fix the dropping issue, and he should be good to go.
Yeah, it's crazy though. We say that every year, so I don't know if he's gonna ever fix that. But I mean, he did show some good things. I'm not gonna lie. Last couple of games, Heinicke. But agreed. We definitely need to get a wide receiver 3 there. Do you think we should draft that guy in the first round, or do you think you talked about the depth, right? Do you think we should go after a guy maybe later in the draft?
So I think if he thinks that the quarterback is there and he can trade up and not give up that much, you go for it. If not, I really like that linebacker from Notre Dame, Jeremiah, who's from the DMV area, I think Hampton. Yeah. I like him. Also, Zaven Collins from Tulsa. Micah Parsons does have character issues, so we all know Ron Rivera, military man. I don't know if he'll like to deal with that. But I don't think because this wide receiver draft class is so deep that probably gonna get a good receiver in the second or the third.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said that last year. This year, of course, is the same. I think it's gonna be the case for years to come. Honestly, with deep wide receiver classes, I think wide receivers are so much more skilled now when it comes to route running, and it's not just about catching the deep ball or maybe going up and getting the catch. There's literally an art to route running that I think is showing up more and more today. But okay, so wide receiver position, running back position, quarterback position, out the way, offensive line as well. What are your thoughts on the tight end position? I mean, we didn't add anybody in free agency. Logan Thomas is clearly the tight end 1 at this point, but do you think we might add someone maybe in the draft?
I think we need to drop someone that is Jeremy Sprinkle. But no, I really think Logan, even he put up some good numbers with the crazy quarterback play that we had last year. I think with Ryan Fitzpatrick, he did have when he was in Miami, he loved his Mike Gesicki, I think that's his name. So I think Logan Thomas will probably have better numbers than last year, and I'm really confident as him being our tight end number 1.
Okay. But I mean, in terms of his backups, right? What if you drop Jeremy Sprinkle, tight end 2 is going to be Marcus Ball? I mean,
I know.
Or maybe Thaddeus Moss. Do you see anything?
Yeah, I think they might draft one, but I don't know. Though I know this is not going to happen. But Kyle Pitts from Florida, man, that guy's.
If we end up, I mean, it's probably going to be a top 5 pick now. But like, if we end up getting him, man, my gosh, Kyle Pitts, Logan Thomas, Tony Gibson, J.D. McKissick, Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, potentially a wide receiver a couple rounds later.
What was his 40 time again?
I'm not sure.
Is it a 4.4 or 4.3? I think it was. I don't remember, but like 6'6", just he's a matchup nightmare.
4.46.
4.46. 4.4. He's at 4.46 at 6'6". He's a matchup nightmare.
Yeah. Although the one thing I think this is being swept under the rug a little bit too much, but I mean, we see this every like year with tight ends getting drafted into the league. Tight end is like notorious for being a position that like rookies are very slow in terms of their development, right? It usually takes a couple years. I mean, we saw that with Hawkinson. Like everybody thought Hawkinson was going to be a bust, prospect, a tight end. I mean, he hasn't been a bust, but like it took him, a couple seasons. And late last year, he started to really get into like the groove of things and actually made some touchdown catches and caught a lot of balls. But I mean, do you buy into that? I personally do, but do you buy into that?
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah, it does. I mean, look at Logan Thomas, for example. The guy was playing a different position and then was at tight end. Moved around some places and then came here, coached him up. It does take some time. It's just you got to have that patience, which I don't know if a lot of our fans do, especially the quarterback.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so now we got the tight end position out of the way. I believe we're done with the offense, but now the best unit by far on the team, the defensive line. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think? I mean, there's so many questions to ask with that, but so one, what are your thoughts on the current, structure of the defensive line? Do you think that they'll only continue and improve off of the season that they had last year? Yeah, and we'll get to a couple more questions about it.
I think they'll dominate even more because Matt Ioannidis got hurt. I think early in the year.
Week one.
Yeah, week one. Yeah, and I think with him I think he's our best pass rusher. Like just up the middle, man. This defensive line is a group. Honestly, everyone says the best in the league. There's also the Rams with Aaron Donald, but they're gonna dominate. I have no question about them. They're always gonna show up every Sunday, and they're our foundation of this winning team that we're gonna have. Hopefully,
it's crazy. I think Chase Young really unlocked like the potential. Like we talking about the potential.
Even more crazy. Well, was a rookie.
Yeah. So it was cool to see them actually like ball out like for real on the field, right? Not just us talking about the potential and all that. But okay. So with the defensive line, I do agree with you. Matt Ioannidis is probably the best defensive lineman really in that entire unit, if we're gonna be honest, over the last couple of seasons, or at least interior defensive lineman, because you obviously have Chase Young on the edge. But do you think Jonathan Allen is gonna get an extension this offseason? How much?
I don't. How much did they say he was like his price might be? Do you remember? I don't remember.
Well, I think it was like he was asking for $18 million, but Leonard Williams, my gosh, he got $21 million a year after one double-digit sack season, and like everybody's calling him a bust, pretty much, like, or not a bust, but not top 5 pick, top 6 picks wherever he was selected. It was 6, but
$21 million? That's a lot of money
a year. Yeah.
Jeez. I don't know. I don't know if they. The thing is, I was also going to ask you, like, do you think they would, if they don't, like, if they're not able to pay Matt Ian, or they paid out Daron Payne or Jonathan Allen, which one would you trade?
I would trade Daron Payne. I just think Jonathan Allen.
I think he's
well, yeah, but I just think his production is slept on by like a lot of fans. Like, I mean, he's more obviously he had that one season where he had 8 sacks, but a lot of people forget. He was playing defensive end, right, at that point in the 3-4 defense. I think it was like his second year. So, I mean, he was like the team wanted him to go after the quarterback, but now it's all about setting other guys up. And he did that so well last year. I believe we were 6th in sacks in the entire NFL last season. And a big reason for that was Jonathan Allen, setting his teammates up. And very good run stopper as well, which, we've had some problems with, run stopping the last couple of years, although I think it's more so the linebacker unit, which we'll get to a little bit later. But I would go with Jonathan Allen and leadership. I mean, I didn't even talk about that, but leadership.
Yeah, but Daron Payne, man, that guy can cause turnovers. But I don't know. I agree with Jonathan Allen though.
That's why, like, with Daron Payne, though, it's not like you're just going to let him go, right? Or at least we don't want that to happen. We want them to trade him away, potentially get a first-round pick.
I think it'll be like the DeForest Buckner trade with the
exactly.
49ers. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do you think Chase Young is he gonna get double-digit sacks this season? Is he gonna really prove to be a top 5 defensive end in this league? What are your thoughts?
I think I think he will hit double-digit sack and just keep balling out at the number 2 overall pick that we chose him at, and just be a leader for this defense. It's just gonna get better and better.
Okay. What about
Mon-
his partner on the other side, Montez Sweat?
Man, I love
Yeah.
Montez Sweat. When we
Same.
traded up for him, it's crazy that we have both of them. The Sack brothers, That's all you're gonna say. I don't know who's gonna have more sacks. I don't know. I think Montez will, just because more experience of playing, but they're just so dominant. I just can't wait to see them play.
Yeah. I mean, you guys can check the receipts or the past videos and stuff from like even before this season, but I told you guys Montez was gonna have more sacks than Chase Young this season.
Mhm.
Although this time around, I think Chase Young is gonna have
There's
more
more.
sacks next year. Just because he'll have a full offseason under his belt
Mhm.
and full year of NFL experience under his belt. But man, we have a bright future with that defense line with Chase Young, Montez Sweat. But do you think Ryan Kerrigan potentially could come back? There have been reports about that. Or maybe at the very least, us adding to the position because we're literally one injury away from starting James Smith-Williams.
I'm surprised he hasn't got signed to Contender yet, but I think that if no one's signing him, I say you make an offer for him and see what he wants, because the guy, he's been here for so long, just dominates when he gets his snaps, and talking about the injury, just next man up mentality.
Yeah. Moving on a bit. In my opinion, the worst position on the team that is the linebacker position. Which isn't that huge. I mean, I think it's a big problem, but I don't think a lot of people do because of the fact that like we have a defensive line, we have a secondary, so we don't need stout linebacker play. But what are your thoughts on the position? Do you think I believe Cole Holcomb will probably be a starter, but I mean, there's 2 other spots there. What are your thoughts? Do you think we potentially might add a guy late in free agency, like a KJ Wright, or potentially another linebacker there, or maybe in the draft get a guy like you said, Micah Parsons, maybe Dylan Moses, Chaz Surratt? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I wouldn't mind a KJ Wright. It would be nice to get him in free agency, but I really want to get a linebacker in the draft. A guy that can cover and just stop the run. I mean, look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Devin White, Shaquille Barrett, Levante David. That whole defense as a group. Just when you have a good defensive line and a good linebacker crew, they limited the Patrick Mahomes offense to 9 points in the Super Bowl? Yeah.
Yeah. You think John Bostic is gonna a guy that I love to I'm not gonna say trash, but I'm not a huge John Bostic fan, as all the people out there watching this know. Do you think he's gonna secure another starting spot this year? Or do you think he's gonna be a backup where he should be?
I think he'll be a backup. I don't think he's terrible, but I think we could do better.
No. And then last but not least on that defense, we already talked about the cornerbacks earlier, but safety group, do you think Cameron Curl is going to move over to free safety, Landon Collins stay at strong safety? Do you think Landon Collins is going to, move into that hybrid linebacker type of role, and Cam Curl will stay at strong safety, potentially go after a free safety in the draft for free agency? What are your thoughts on that position?
I think they're gonna keep Cam at strong safety. Landon, I don't know. I mean, he had his best game before coming off that injury, man. And
I think he had to pick that game, right?
Huh?
I think he had to pick that game, right?
No, he strip sacked Danny Dalton, and there was a safety. Yeah. And I mean, I think that Landon Collins signing is the last bad Dan Snyder signing, hopefully, but I don't know. Hopefully he can prove the haters wrong. I mean, I've seen so many people on Instagram just tell him, play linebacker, play linebacker. It's hilarious, honestly.
And he refuses. He doesn't want to.
Yeah.
He should do what Keanu Neal's doing, though, and just, take one for the team.
Yeah.
I mean, he's getting paid so much already, so why not take him? Yeah. But yeah, I mean, technically not the last unit, right? Because we have kicker, special teams and stuff. I mean, do you think it was the right decision to bring Dustin Hopkins back, or do you think would have been better to go?
For some reason I have a soft spot for Dustin. I don't know why I do, but I really like him. But the thing is, he just needs to make those within 40-yard kicks. I mean, those are like chip shots for an NFL kicker. And I think it was the right decision. But if he like is missing them like early in the season, you gotta let him go.
Yeah. No, this is, I guess, like the only one that I completely disagree with you on. I just don't like Dustin Hopkins.
I get. Yeah.
Like, okay, so in previous years, he was less of a problem because you would make those, within 40-yard like kicks and stuff. But we all knew if it was 45 yards or beyond was not a gimme whatsoever for Dustin Hopkins. And I understand, like, for most kickers, that's the case. But like, if you want to, reach another step, right, when it comes to the kicker position and reach another step with your entire football team and win those close games towards the end of the season that would allow you to get into the playoffs, you need a good kicker. Yeah. I just think Dustin Hopkins is below average to slightly average at this point, and I can do better.
Yeah, for sure.
But so we talked extensively about all the position groups on Washington football team. I do want to get your thoughts in the couple minutes we have. We have about 5 minutes. Some rapid fire questions. So one, do you think Washington football team would be a good name to stick with for permanently, or do you think Red Wolves, Warriors? But yeah, rapid fire.
So I don't think the Warriors would be a good name just because Golden State NBA, they've been so dominant. They're gonna by them. Yeah, Red Wolves, I like it, but football team is kind of growing on me, man. It's so fun. Like when I tell my friends, hey, you guys lost to a team with no name. It's a big flex. I mean, I don't really mind, but I like football team. But Red Wolves, I wouldn't mind that either.
Okay. I would rather like Washington Football Club. Like I said that even in the summer. I just think that sounds much cooler than team. I don't know. I know it's like small things, but I think it makes a big difference. And we've already seen, in soccer, football clubs and stuff. So, and then everybody could just call us Washington, right? Or Washington FC, but usually just Washington. Yeah. And then the last question before, well, the second to last question, I do want to get your thoughts on the basketball that's going on right now, both with the Wizards and how piss poor they've been, and also the March Madness tournament. Your thoughts on all that?
The Wizards, they need to trade Bradley Beal. That man has been through so much. As you said, I remember you said on Twitter, they should have done the rebuild a while ago. This team, they need to fire Scott Brooks. They have too much talent to be the 13th seed in the terrible Eastern Conference. It just doesn't make any sense. You just need to blow this whole thing up, man.
Yeah, I agree. And your thoughts on DMV college basketball teams being out of the tournament, like literally after the first game?
It sucks, man. I mean, I kind of saw Ohio winning against UVA because that
always happens. Yeah, it always happens. Yeah. Like I literally predicted that as an upset. It always happens. That's why 2019 was so crazy because of the fact that UVA actually went over the hump and won.
Yeah, and then the Alabama game, I mean, like you guys were saying, the three-pointers, oh my God. But, hopefully this year was all crazy with sports, with the whole pandemic and everything. So hopefully next year UVA somehow gets back into the Final Four, maybe win a championship.
Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, that Jason Preston kid, I believe, from Ohio, he's going to be a star, man.
So who do you have winning it all?
At this point, so you guys will see in the next couple of clips from the Unleashed with John Z and Nazi show that we're trying to be getting going with Chicago, but I did predict my March Madness teams there, but I will say here Final Four teams, I think Alabama. I can actually get them up right now. Let me check just to make sure. I know Gonzaga is there. I know the ultimate championship game is actually Gonzaga, and believe it or not, my adopted college team, Loyola Chicago, here in Chicago. I think they're going to make it to the national championship. Gonzaga is going to win it all. I can get the actual Final Four. What are your thoughts? Who do you think is going to make the Final Four?
I think Gonzaga's going to win it all. I mean, Jalen Suggs, that guy is amazing, and they've been so well coached. I don't know if anyone can stop them, honestly.
Yeah. Although I mean, one, they haven't lost the game this year, so it'd be crazy for them to win. It all undefeated season and all that. But you always got to be a little bit nervous with Gonzaga because they always seem to lose when you expect them to make even a deeper run, right? Whether it be Sweet 16 or Elite 8. So we'll see. My Final
So,
Four, though. Oh, go
I
ahead.
have a question. Do you? My friends and I were talking about this. Do you think the upsets and all that make March Madness better, or do you
Yes.
think like because they were like,
Yeah.
oh well, the first seed teams it'll be more entertaining if they were in the Final Four of the Elite Eight. And I'm like, well, they just needed to win, but if they lose, that's their problem.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, man. Like upsets is what makes March Madness madness. Like
Yeah,
there's a reason
that's
why
what I
people
mean.
call it that.
Yeah.
So I'm all for it. Although,
Mhm.
of course, DMV college basketball teams, like we gotta step up, man. I literally Georgetown was like my team in the area and stuff, and that was an absolute disappointment that
How much
first
did they lose
game.
by? How much did they lose by?
It was like almost 30 points, I believe, or somewhere around 30 points. I watched that entire game and just absolute disgust on a Saturday afternoon. And yeah, hopefully Patrick Ewing and the boys, come back better next year and make a deeper run. But it was cool, with the Big East tournament.
I mean, at least UVA won 2 years ago. So
Yeah. Although, I mean, I like to keep this on the road, but like, I'm not the biggest of UVA basketball fans, although I was, when I was growing up. But Georgetown's my team.
Mhm.
If I were to go with the second team, yeah, I'd probably be UVA, but Georgetown's my team for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And my Final Four teams were Loyola Chicago, Gonzaga, Roll Tide, Alabama, and Baylor. Those are my 4 teams, actually.
And you have Gonzaga winning it all. Oh, look, yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they're finally gonna get it done this year and win it all. But last but not least, final question. As I like to ask, every guest that's on here, going back to the Washington football team, right? We pretty much covered all the sports in the area. The Nats, we'll find a time to talk about that when, the season comes along and stuff. But with the Washington football team, the team in the area, what are your thoughts about the future of this franchise? Do you think, a long Super Bowl, okay, let me say this, a long playoff run will be coming in short order? Do you think, Super Bowl maybe in a couple of years, or, let's forget about the Super Bowl. Do you think this team will build upon the season that had last year?
I think Super Bowl maybe in a couple of years, but I think it's safe to say, as a fellow friend used to say, that we have finally a good culture. I think it's safe to say that, and it's off the field, on the field. Our social media team, like, so much better now. It's amazing.
Oh my! They won an award, right, for like best.
I think but they're goated. I love them, and I just think the culture is changing. And it's just gonna turn up eventually. All my years of being a fan, I've never been so optimistic about this team.
Exactly. That's what matters right there.
Yeah.
As a young generation of fans, that's what matters right there.
Yeah.
Hopefully we could get Lombardi number 4, in a couple of years. But
It would be nice.
with that being said, Abdullah, thank you so much for joining, bro. I appreciate it as
Thanks
always.
for inviting
And
me.
no problem. And I did make sure to link your YouTube channel
Thanks.
link in the description. So make
Yeah.
sure you guys go check out his channel. Great content on there as always. And any last thing you want to plug before we wrap up?
Fire Scott Brooks, cut Jeremy Sprinkle. Hail to the football team.
There you go. Thank you guys so much for watching. Everybody that joined the chat throughout this hour. Lee, Brandon, Corey, Abdullah earlier, 12, Pedro at the very beginning, Maria, everybody. Appreciate it as always. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching once again, and have a great rest of your week. Peace out.